Veg versus non-veg. Which type of food eaters are stronger, more smart and intelligent, more active, and live longer lives? Like cows, for example, eat grass and lions eat meat. Similarly, if we look at the natural biology of a human being, what food are we meant to eat? What food are we made for? Fruits and vegetables, or animal meat? Because the only natural food that is meant for us will give us a fit and healthy body. Right, let's take a look at this. This is Jordan Peterson, a very famous psychologist. According to him, when he started eating strictly only non-vegetarian food, which is also called the carnivore diet, his weight suddenly dropped and most of his health problems also went away.
What else has changed? Well, I lost 50 pounds, like instantly, and kept it off. I don't like to propagate it, but this diet seems to have stopped all of that. I don't have psoriasis. All of the patches have gone.
Now, that's interesting, right? Even more so when an intellectual scientist is saying this and there are many people who share the same experience. That non-vegetarian diet changed his life completely. But on the other hand, there are also many people who say exactly the opposite. For example, you can watch this TEDx talk in which an entrepreneur says that ever since he shifted to a vegetarian plant-based diet, his life has totally changed.
Over the next 6 months of following a primarily whole food, plant-based diet, not only did I continue to experience crazy amounts of energy and mental clarity, but every single health issue I had battled since I was 3 years old went away.
Now, when you will look at the comments below this video, you will find a lot of comments that share the same experience. So here, what is it really true, brother? Well, let's settle this years of long debate once and for all. Because today, the referee of this wrestling match will be science, whose purpose is only one, to find out the truth. And honestly speaking, we need to settle this. Because nowadays, many people are talking about incomplete information from social media, are getting influenced by their favorite influencers, and are still going on extreme diets, which is putting their lives at risk. Like, for example, take this case that happened last year. A 39-year-old Russian food influencer, Jana Samsonova, suddenly one fine day, she passed away, and when the post-mortem report came out, it was found that she was severely malnourished. And do you know what the reason was? The reason was a strict vegan diet. Madam, in order to promote a healthy lifestyle diet, for quite some time she had been strictly following a vegan diet, without knowing its pros and cons. At least 60% of vegetarians are already at stage 3 vitamin B12 deficiency, which can cause brain dysfunction, depression, memory problems, or even Alzheimer's like psychiatric and neurological disorders. So is a vegetarian diet a flawed diet in any way? If that's the case, then is it true that when we eat fruits, we have a sweet taste? What it means, basically through taste, our body is giving us this signal that eat this, it's good for your health. But we can't eat raw meat without cooking it. So how can meat be our natural food? Historically, what were human beings supposed to eat? And in today's time, what are the wrong things that we are eating that were never meant for us to eat in the first place? Well, to know the answer to all these questions, we will have to look into history. At that time, when our ancestors first set foot on this earth. At that time, what was their first food after all? So the story is somewhat like this, that about 66 million years ago, when the earth recovered after the extinction of dinosaurs. At that time, there were dense forests all around and there were fruits everywhere. Now, something like this happened those days. Such a new life form appeared, which had human-like palms, but it looked like a mixed breed of mouse and squirrel. It was the first primate of the world. Can you believe it? And it is our first ancestor, whose name was Purgatorius. This primate, who was the first common ancestor of modern monkeys, apes, and humans, was believed that mostly eaten fruits. Now you know why we find fruits so sweet, because fruit is our ancient food. And that's why you'll also notice that most of the carnivorous animals either don't have sweet taste receptors or they are inactive. They can't taste the sweetness of fruits like we can do it. But even after so many millions of years of evolution, only we humans and monkeys still enjoy the sweetness of fruits. All in all, according to science, there is no debate that we originally started with a vegetarian diet. But does this actually prove that even today our bodies are only made for a pure vegan diet? Well, not up till now. From today, about 15 million years ago, some descendants of Purgatorius started evolving in such a way that their bodies also began to digest some rough things. Because of this, their vegan diet started to diversify, and apart from fruits, they also began to eat things like seeds, nuts, roots, and bark. And according to scientists, it's proof in the first hominin means the first ancestor of modern humans. Sahelanthropus chadensis, an Australopithecus species, is visible, from whom all Homo species evolved. You can see in the dental structure of both species that maybe their canines have evolved from this diet, which made every jaw smaller and provided thicker protective white coating on the teeth. Or enamel, which is usually found in those animals that have to break hard seeds and nuts. Plus, scientists have found microscopic pits and scratches on their teeth, which also indicate that seeds and nuts were a regular part of their diet. Basically, this means is when our evolutionary lineage separated from other primates, and after that the ancestors of modern humans were completely vegetarian. But at this exact moment, a major change was about to happen. When our ancestors started eating seeds and nuts, this diet prepared us to become carnivores. Let me explain to you how. How did we become meat eaters? So first, our ancestors used to eat fruits, flowers, and leaves in which there is less lipid and protein and more fiber. So that's why the system to digest lipids and proteins, small intestine was shorter, and cecum, on the other hand, large intestine's initial end, which has a pouch-like organ in which there are fiber-digesting bacteria present, that was larger. But then, just like our ancestors started eating seeds and nuts, which have less fiber and more lipids and protein, to digest such things, their small intestine got longer, and instead, cecum got shrink. That means, along with digesting seeds and nuts, there were morphological and structural changes happening in the body. And ultimately, they had a perfect gut, which could digest meat to some extent, along with the vegetarian food. But obviously, the ability to digest meat is one thing, and seeing a moving living organism as breakfast is completely different thing. Naturally, our ancestors needed a trigger that would bind them to hunt. And this trigger was found as early as 2.5 million years ago. A major change occurred on Earth as dense forests, which were filled with fruits, began to change into large open grasslands. Back then, every year, there was a drought from January to April. Some of our ancestors, Australopithecus, robust Australopithecus, were avoiding hunting even after a lack of choice. And at their places, they were still surviving by eating low-quality plants, because of which they became extinct. But at the same time, on the other hand, there were some other Australopithecus who learned to eat dead animals and insects. And because of this, their gut, which was only evolved to digest fats, now started to digest a protein diet as well. And exactly for this reason, I repeat, for this high protein diet, some Australopithecus species evolved into intelligent Homo sapiens. So this is basically the very crazy fact that today, the sharp minds that we humans have, because of which we are able to think about ethics and morals, and we are able to sacrifice non-veg, that is because of non-veg in the first place. Crazy, right? But scientifically accurate. Also, there is a factor that plays a major role in this context, the Indian climate. And this climate causes quite harmful diseases like skin cancer. The reason behind this is that 65% of India don't use sunscreen, because in India, mostly foreign brand sunscreens are available, which are made according to their cold and dry climate. And that's why all these sunscreens make our skin oily in India's hot and humid climate. But no worries, to find the best sunscreen in the Indian context, let's conduct a test, the blotting paper test. And for this test, I have taken the top 6 sunscreens on the market, and I will put some amount of these sunscreens on the blotting paper. Basically, blotting paper absorbs oil, so whatever amount of oil is absorbed by the paper, we will find out which sunscreen is the best for oily skin. So, after putting it as it is for some time, let's compare its results. You can see that in some brands, the oil came out in some quantity, but in a few, a lot of oil came out. But in Deconstruct specifically, no oil came out. So definitely this is one of the best sunscreens available in India for Indian skin, because it will not make your skin oily even in our climate. I have placed this product's link in the description below. Definitely check it out. Now, let's come back to our video where we were discussing whether we should eat meat or not. Even this capability to think this thought came to us because we started eating meat. In fact, experts say that we learned how to make sharp tools from stones and blades at this time when our minds were growing at high speed. At that time, because we didn't have long canines to tear meat from bones, that's why our ancestors started using sharp tools as knives and began eating meat. Now, in such a situation, a question might come to your mind that then why didn't we become completely meat-eating animals like lions or tigers? Even behind this, there is another interesting reason. Unlike other meat-eating animals, we discovered fire. And consequently, we started eating cooked meat. That means our stomachs didn't need to evolve as those animals that eat raw meat. And that's why even today, we don't like the taste of raw meat. But people who eat cooked meat crave it. So technically, if you look from the perspective of evolution, our body is neither made for a strict vegan diet, nor is it made for a strict non-vegetarian diet. According to the morphology of our body, whether we are veg or non-veg, we can eat both to acquire balanced nutrition. That's why a vegetarian or non-vegetarian can't say that you are eating something that nature has not made for you. Because as paradoxical as it may sound, we became non-vegetarian by eating vegetarian food. And then, when we should not eat meat, a brain with such thinking was only able to be developed because of eating meat. So now you have some historical and scientific background. So now let's understand which diet, vegetarian or non-vegetarian, is the best for our body and health. So for this, we will scientifically compare both diets on 4 different parameters to decide the ultimate winner. Cool, then let's start. The first factor is strength. What do you think, whether a non-vegetarian human will be more powerful or vegetarian human? In this case, there's a 19th century German bodybuilder. Eugene Sandow is quite famous. You must have heard about him too. He is often called the father of modern bodybuilding. He always said that a high meat diet, which includes eggs, milk, and other animal products, is the best for muscle growth and for strength. And this claim is also strongly backed by a study from the 21st century. A study published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition states that animal-derived whey proteins have at least 30% more amino acids than plant-based protein sources like soy protein, including both essential and branched-chain amino acids. Animal proteins are superior to plant proteins for muscle repair after exercise. Plus, the epic Oxford study in 2016 also confirmed that meat eaters have an added advantage over vegans when it comes to maintaining muscle mass. That's why Jordan Peterson's experience with a carnivore diet is also similar. But realistically speaking, our energy depends on our bones more than muscles, correct? Because even if you are thin, you can pick up a gas cylinder if you push yourself. But let's say if you have arthritis or bone cancer or any bone disease, then even if you become muscular, you still can't pick up a simple suitcase. So for bone strength, which diet is better? Well, in reputed journals like Lancet, there are many such cases reported in which people had severe osteoporosis because of calcium deficiency. That means bones became hollow, because of which the risk of fracture increased by 30%. Would you like to know what type of diet they were taking? Well, all of them were vegans. Because of eating vegan food, their body were only getting 500 to 700 milligrams of calcium, which is literally half of what your body needs on a daily basis. But here, in my research, I came across a very interesting case from about 2000 years ago. So, the Roman gladiators were always kept on a well-planned vegetarian diet. And all these warriors were strong fighters, were very powerful. So how were they able to keep themselves strong? Well, it turns out that to make up for the lack of calcium, a little bit of ash was added to their diet. And to make up for the lack of protein, they used to eat things like barley, beans, dry fruits, and multiple protein sources, so that if there is a deficiency of amino acids in one source, it can be fulfilled by another source. That means basically the conclusion is that in the case of strength, a non-vegetarian diet gives a slight advantage because you get complete sources of nutrition. However, if you're a vegetarian, then with some planning, if you consume multiple plant-based protein sources in which there is the right amount of calcium, then also you'll be good to go. But what's important is that every vegan or vegetarian has this awareness, and you have to actively craft your diet accordingly. Leaving a vegan diet on chance is like living your health on luck. Now, let's talk about the second parameter, which is performance, in which endurance and stamina come in. Now in this, what do you think? Who will win? Let's see. So there is an American ultra marathoner, Scott Jurek, who has won the 161 kilometers Western States Endurance Run and 217 kilometers Badwater Ultra Marathon Run. He said in his one book, Eat and Run, that he wins all these ultra marathons because of a plant-based diet. Likewise, the Tarahumara people of Mexico, renowned for their long-distance running prowess, are also include food like corns, beans, squash, and chia seeds in their diet. And why is it so? What is the relation between a vegetarian diet and endurance? And what are the disadvantages to a non-vegetarian diet? There are mainly two reasons for this. One is dehydration and the other is energy utilization. Why dehydration? Because when proteins are metabolized, the body produces urea as a byproduct. And as you know, it takes a lot of water to excrete urea. Now, a non-vegetarian diet, being a high-protein diet, it wastes a lot of body water to eliminate excess protein. And that's why, due to faster dehydration, people often can't perform well in endurance activities. Another interesting fact here is that a vegetarian diet is a high-carbohydrate diet. And if a gram of carbohydrate retains 3 grams of water in the body, then it provides you with extra hydration, which is what helps you run long distances. Now let's talk about the second reason, which is energy efficiency. So if I talk about stamina, which animal comes to your mind? You start thinking about horses, right? That's what comes to mind. You think of horses. But the thing is, it's like all carnivores can run fast in short sprints like cheetahs, but can't sustain it for long distances. One major reason behind this is that carnivores mostly don't use carbohydrates to fuel their fast sprints, but instead use fats as energy sources that are slowly converted into energy. The other reason is that vegetarian diets have carbohydrates loaded with glucose and fructose, which provide sustained and easily available energy to the body in the form of blood glucose and liver glycogen, which gives an advantage to vegetarians over non-vegetarians. Non-veg food doesn't have carbohydrates in their food, but mostly fats and protein, which the body can't use readily to convert into energy. That's why, if you look into the animal world, you'll see an interesting story. Carnivores have traded energy for muscle power. So, all in all, in the case of endurance, a vegetarian diet is always better than a non-vegetarian diet. Now let's talk about the third parameter, which is cognitive functions, that is the brain power. Now, see, in the case of evolution, this is already decided that our brain's development has only happened just because we started eating meat. We got more protein and nutrition-dense calories from eating meat, which added an edge to our brain development and allowed us to evolve into Homo sapiens. Also, we learned that a vegan diet can cause stage 3 vitamin B12 deficiency, but you shouldn't assume that deficiencies have only serious effects. You might remember, we mentioned in the last video that there is a process called the deoxyribonucleic acid methylation process, which turns on or off the gene expression or the instructions given to your body. Well, guess what? The vitamin B12 that we eat plays an important role in this methylation process. And since our brain needs to release a lot of hormones and neurotransmitters, for which it is necessary to regulate a lot of genes expression, that's why vitamin B12's deficiency's direct meaning is compromising with brain, hormones, and neurotransmitters function. And that's the reason I mentioned earlier that vitamin B12 deficiency is linked to psychiatric and neurological disorders. Now, to fulfill this deficiency, vegetarians and vegans have to take vitamin B12 supplements. They are even inexpensive, but come on, we are talking about a fair competition here. So, we won't consider artificial supplements, and if we look at the point of cognitive functions, it goes to the non-vegetarian diet. So, until now, both diets get 2 points each. And we have a tie now, so we strongly need a tiebreaker. So, let's move on to the final and the most important parameter, the fourth parameter, diseases and longevity. Which means, who is going to live a longer life? Now, in this particular parameter, the game is a bit tricky, and deciding the winner is quite difficult because if we talk about of all-cause mortality, which means specifically because of eating veg or non-veg, the lifespan increases or decreases, no such strong correlations were found. At this point, it can be said that people who consume both types of diets live an equal lifespan. If we talk further about mortality because of diseases such as heart disease or cancer, then the story changes a bit here. According to a study, in vegetarians, heart disease mortality was found to be 24% lower than in non-vegetarians, but there is a small twist in this as well. These heart diseases are mostly correlated with red meat. Because, for example, in this study, there were also people who used to eat fish and not other meat. In those, people dying from heart diseases are even 10% less than vegetarians, so 34% less than other meat eaters. So at least in the case of heart disease, we can conclude that a specific category of diet is lethal. You'll just need to choose the option smartly. But in non-veg foods, there is one problem that is quite concerning. In the year 2012, when some researchers tried to understand the effects of diet on our stress hormone levels, they found out that diets densely packed with saturated fats and proteins, like those found in meat-heavy diets regularly consumed, release more stress hormone. Cortisol is released. The direct mechanism of this is not revealed yet. But some studies suggest that possibly high saturated fats and proteins can overload our digestive system. And because of this, stress hormones are released. Also, and more importantly, this side effect is not limited to you. An interesting observation was found in studies that pregnant women who regularly eat meat, be it red meat or fish, it was seen in them that their children are born with high blood pressure because of high cortisol levels. Plus, there is a risk of cancer as well. The International Agency for Research on Cancer and the World Health Organization, both organizations, have clearly listed red meat, meaning beef, pork, goat, lamb, and horse, among the possible carcinogens for several years. Because there are more than 500 studies that suggest that red meat can cause several types of cancer, especially colorectal cancer, in which bloody stools are seen. Researchers also show that per 100 grams of red meat can increase the chance of cancer by 17%. It happens because when we cook red meat, at that time, whatever nitrate compounds are present in it are converted into N-nitroso compounds because of heat, which are carcinogenic. When these N-nitroso compounds are formed, they damage the inner lining of our stomach cells, which can sometimes cause colorectal cancer over a long period of time. So, if living a long life is your main goal, then consuming a majorly vegetarian diet, plant-based diet, provided that you're getting all the nutrition, is your best option. In a vague diet, there are plenty of antioxidants, phytochemicals, and flavonoids which protect us from cancer and chronic inflammation. But if you people are not vegetarians, then avoid red meat, because in non-vegetarians, 80% of diseases are caused by consuming red meat. Lean meat like chicken and fish are a healthy option in moderation, and they are actually required as per our body. For example, chicken livers are the best source of B12. So guys, who should be the winner of this final round? What do you think? I want you guys to conclude. I have also asked this question in the pinned comments. So to support, write veg or non-veg below, and let's see which one gets more likes. Before going, I would like to give a last message. Be cautious with any diet you follow and practice moderation, and don't take them to extremes. Even if you are choosing veganism, ensure that you are getting all the nutrients through supplements. However, according to many doctors and nutritionists, in a vegan diet, taking all the nutrients, even using supplements, is challenging. There are many such nutrients that will be lacking in a vegan diet, like omega-3 fatty acids, iron-containing heme groups, zinc, calcium, creatine, carnosine, taurine, etc. You don't get these nutrients in sufficient quantity from a vegan diet, and due to their deficiency, anemia, weak bones, muscle wasting, and many such conditions can be created. So craft your diet accordingly. Be more proactive with planning your diet. Don't forget, at first we make choices and then our choices make us. And this holds most true with what we eat. So friends, if you learned anything new from this video, then do share this video with your friends and family members. Let's spread scientific education about our diet and nutrition. And we have to develop a scientific temperament in India that we can only do together. And yes, friends, before going, don't forget to check out Deconstruct Sunscreen, made specifically for Indian skin type. The link is in the description. So thanks for watching. See you another time. Till then, stay fit and take care. Jai Jind.